Halfway through Love Me Tender, Elvis stopped. The spotlight caught a boy in the front row oxygen line gleaming under the stage lights. His small hands shook as tears rolled down his cheeks. The king lowered his microphone. In the packed arena, 18,000 people fell silent, waiting to see what he'd do. Stories like this remind us why Elvis wasn't just a voice, he was a heart. Stick with me to the end, because what happens next still moves fans to tears decades later. The brass section hit a sharp note, cymbals shimmered, and Elvis leaned into the mic with that half smile that told the crowd he was about to give them everything. It was the mid-1970s, inside one of Las Vegas's most famous showrooms, the kind with red velvet seats, round tables littered with champagne glasses, and cigarette smoke curling toward the chandeliers. On stage, Elvis Presley's white jumpsuit caught every flash of the spotlight, the rhinestones sparking like a field of cameras. The sound was tight, guitar strings bright, bass steady as Elvis took 3 measured steps toward stage right. The fans in the front rows leaned forward, hoping to catch a smile or a scarf. That's when it happened. From the corner of his eye, Elvis spotted something unusual in the sea of faces. A ripple of movement, like a current running against the tide of clapping hands. Near the center of the front row sat a young boy, no more than 7 or 8, in a wheelchair. His breathing was shallow, a clear oxygen tube taped to his cheek. In his trembling hands, he clutched a piece of cardboard with big black letters, words that would never make it to the SET list. A woman, his mother, by the way she kept one arm around his shoulders, was looking straight at Elvis, her lips moving. She wasn't singing. She was trying to say something to him. Elvis slowed, but the band played on. The crowd's eyes followed his gaze, curious, unsure. The boy's head tilted up toward the stage. Even from here, Elvis could see the glint of tears on his cheeks. The king's boot heel hit the edge of the stage. Another step, and he would have moved past. But he didn't. The music swelled for the chorus, yet Elvis's focus was locked. He took 2 more slow steps toward the boy. The sin shook harder in the child's grip. The words were partly hidden, but Elvis caught enough to read. "I came to see you, Elvis." The boy's lips parted, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. His mother leaned in, whispering in his ear, and he gave the faintest nod. Elvis tilted his head slightly, like he'd made a decision. His left hand came up, palm open, almost invisible behind the mic stand. A signal, and that's when the first chord of Love Me Tender hung in the air, just a fraction longer than usual. Some say this was the moment when 18,000 people realized they were about to witness something you couldn't buy a ticket for. Elvis shifted his weight toward the boy, the crowd still cheering, and his hand moved to signal the band. But instead of the big finish they were expecting, something else entirely was about to happen. The brass faded, cymbals hissed, and Elvis raised his hand. The music died mid-beat. One small gesture. That's all it took. The crowd's applause stuttered and fell away, like a wave pulling back from the shore. The final note from the guitarist rang out, drifting into the smoky air, and was gone. The only sound left was the faint hiss from the speakers and the rustle of programs in the back rows. Elvis took a step forward, closing the gap to the front of the stage. His eyes never left the boys. "Hey, little man," witnesses recall him saying, voice warm but steady. No microphone now. He had lowered it to his side, but the words carried, helped along by the silence. The boy blinked, startled. A shy smile began to form where the tears had been. "What's your name?" Elvis asked. A pause. The boys, lips moved. No one in the crowd could hear him, but Elvis could. He leaned in a fraction closer, one knee bending toward the stage floor. Then he smiled. Not the stage smile, but something smaller, private. From the corner, a security guard stepped forward, unsure whether to help the boy onto the stage or simply stand by. Elvis gave the faintest shake of his head. Not yet. The boy's mother mouthed something again. Maybe an explanation. Maybe just thank you. Elvis glanced at her for the briefest second, then back to the boy. The spotlight followed, bathing them, both in a sharp cone of light. It caught the thin plastic tubing of the oxygen line, making it gleam. The king crouched lower. His left hand rested on the stage edge, just inches from the boy's own small hand gripping the wheelchair armrest. Audience was frozen. Even the servers had stopped moving between tables. A camera flash went off from somewhere near the back, and for a second, Elvis's jumpsuit lit up like 1,000 stars. "You like music?" Elvis asked. The boy nodded quickly, almost eager now. Elvis straightened slightly, enough to turn his head toward the band. He gave them a look, the kind his musicians knew well, and then a subtle downward wave of his hand. The drummer's sticks paused in midair. The guitarist shifted his fingers into a softer chord. Elvis stood tall again, bringing the microphone back up. But instead of stepping into the next song on the set list, he turned back toward the boy. "Let's try something different," he said, the faintest grin tugging at his mouth. A murmur ran through the audience. People leaned forward, sensing they were about to see something rare. Some say that at that moment, even the waiters in the far corners stopped to watch. The first chord was not from tonight's show, and the way Elvis leaned toward the boy, it was clear this song was just for him. The first note hung in the air, softer, slower, and it wasn't on tonight's set list. The guitarist's fingers eased into a tender G chord. The sound was warm, almost fragile, like it might break if anyone in the room breathed too loudly. Elvis adjusted his stance, one boot heel hooked over the stage edge, and faced the boy directly. "This one's for you," he said. Just for words, but they landed heavy. The crowd hushed to the point where the low hum of the amplifiers became part of the moment. Somewhere in the back, ice clinked in a glass. Then the music began to swell. It was not the high-energy number the audience had expected. This was something else, a song stripped bare, every note carrying weight. Witnesses recall it being just a single verse, one Elvis had sung countless times, but never quite like this. His voice was gentler, almost coaxing the words into the boy's world. The boy's eyes widened, his lips parting as if the sound was pulling him forward. His mother's hand tightened around his shoulder, her knuckles pale. Elvis leaned closer as he sang, his gaze locked. It wasn't performance now. It was connection. Every syllable seemed to be measured, placed exactly where it belonged. Halfway through the verse, something happened that made the room's collective breath catch. The boy mouthed a few words back. The sound was faint, almost inaudible, but witnesses in the front rows swear they heard it, a thin, wavering note. That matched Elvis's line. For a split second, Elvis's smile flickered wider. He slowed the tempo even more, giving space for the boy to join. It was just one line, but it was enough to pull tears from strangers sitting 20 rows back. Above them, the spotlight caught dust in the air, drifting lazily down like snowflakes. Elvis's blue scarf, already darkened with sweat, clung to the back of his neck. He reached up, pulled it free, and with a casual, almost unplanned motion, dabbed his brow. The band's volume fell to a whisper. You could hear the faint click of a camera shutter. As the final chord faded, Elvis didn't turn away. He crouched down until his face was level with the boy's. The scarf was in his hand. "Here," he said simply, placing it gently in the boy's lap. The boy looked down at it, then up at Elvis, and smiled, really smiled this time, his cheeks lifting under the oxygen tube. The crowd's restraint broke. A wave of applause rolled forward, starting in the balcony and crashing toward the stage. Elvis lifted his mic just enough for his next words to carry. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've found a real star tonight." The ovation grew, louder, mixed with whistles and shouts. The boy's mother pressed a hand to her mouth, tears streaming freely now. For a few moments, it felt less like a concert and more like a shared heartbeat. People were hugging strangers, servers clapping along with the audience. Elvis gave the boy's shoulder a gentle squeeze, then stood tall again. His gaze lingered for just a moment longer before he turned back to the crowd. "Let's keep going," he said, nodding to the band. But those closest to the stage noticed something as the lights dimmed for the next number. Elvis glanced toward the wings, signaling someone backstage. Some say this was when the next part of the story truly began. Backstage, Elvis had a quiet word with his manager, and it wasn't about the next song. The stage lights dimmed, but Elvis wasn't heading to his dressing room. He was looking for someone. The applause from the scarf moment was still echoing. As Elvis walked toward the wings, the band slid into the next number, but his mind was elsewhere. According to staff who were there that night, he found his manager near the curtain and leaned in close. "Get me his name, and where they're staying." The manager blinked, nodded, and slipped into the shadows to track down the boy's family. Elvis took a quick drink of water, then stepped right back onto the stage as if nothing had happened. For the rest of the show, he was his usual self, hips moving, voice strong, scarves flying to fans. But every so often, his eyes drifted to that front row seat, to the boy still clutching the blue scarf like it was a lifeline, near the finale. Elvis motioned for the spotlight to sweep the crowd. When it landed on the boy, he smiled again and pointed directly at him. The audience erupted, the ovation nearly drowning out the music. As the last note of the night rang out, Elvis didn't take his usual quick exit. Instead, he walked back to the stage edge, crouched down, and spoke softly to the boy. Witnesses close enough say he rested a hand on the child's shoulder for several seconds, long enough for cameras to catch it, but not rushed like a staged moment. "I'll see you again, little man," he said. The boy nodded, his eyes wide, his mother's hand still gripping his arm. The crowd roared as Elvis gave a final wave, then disappeared backstage. But instead of heading for the car waiting to take him to the hotel, he detoured to the green room. The manager returned within minutes, carrying a small notepad. "Got it," he said. Elvis glanced at the paper, then tucked it into his jumpsuit. "Pocket, you make sure they're looked after tonight," Elvis told him. "And tell them they've got a friend here." One of the crew members later recalled seeing Elvis on the phone before leaving the venue, speaking quietly and smiling. Whatever was being arranged, it was happening right then. Outside, the boy's family was escorted past the lingering crowd. Some fans waved, others stepped aside respectfully. The mother thanked the security guard, still holding her son's new scarf in one hand and the wheelchair handle in the other. Back in the showroom, the staff began clearing tables, sweeping away confetti and half-empty glasses. But among the crew, the story of the boy in the front row was already taking root. A few of them noticed something else. As Elvis left the building that night, he wasn't humming one of his chart toppers. He was quietly whistling the same gentle tune he'd sung to the boy. The next day, according to those close to him, Elvis mentioned the encounter more than once. It wasn't just another fan moment. Something about it had stayed with him, and while the rest of the city moved on to the next night's performance, Elvis was making sure this connection wouldn't end at a handshake and a scarf. A week later, a delivery truck would stop in front of the boy's house, carrying something that would make the scarf look like just the beginning. The rumble of a truck engine broke the quiet of a small neighborhood street. It was just after noon when the sound drew the boy's mother to the front window. A plain white delivery truck rolled to a stop in front of their modest home. The driver stepped out, clipboard in hand, scanning the address to make sure he had it right. The boy sat in his wheelchair by the living room window, still wearing the blue scarf around his neck. His fingers ran over the soft fabric, tracing the faint scent of cologne that hadn't yet faded. Delivery for... The driver read the name, then glanced down at the boy and smiled. "Think this is for you." He returned to the truck and came back carrying a large cardboard box, light enough to handle carefully. A second, much smaller envelope was taped. To the top, the mother wheeled her son closer as the box was set down in the hallway. She slid the envelope free first, opening it slowly. Inside was a single card. On the front, bold handwriting, "You'll always have a seat in the front row. Elvis." The boy grinned, wide, unrestrained, and clutched the card to his chest. His mother's eyes brimmed with tears before she even opened the box. Inside, nestled in soft packing material, was a guitar. Not a full-size model, but a smaller one, perfect for a child's hands. The finish gleamed under the afternoon light streaming through the window. A simple strap was already attached, along with a pick tucked under the strings. The boy reached for it immediately, his small hands hovering over the strings. He strummed once. The sound was bright, pure, and his face lit up. Neighbors later said they could hear that single chord float out the open window. The mother knelt beside him. "He sent this for you," she said quietly, still in disbelief. He remembered. For the next hour, the boy wouldn't let the guitar out of his hands. He plucked at the strings, not caring if the notes were right, only that the sound was his to make. The blue scarf lay draped over his shoulder like part of the instrument itself. Days later, she told friends and neighbors that it was the first time her son had talked about getting better in weeks. He wanted to learn to play a song, the song for when he saw Elvis again. The story would be told and retold over the years, passed among fans, written in letters, and shared in online posts decades later. Not because of the song's melody, or the size of the crowd that night, but because of the quiet choice that turned a fleeting moment into a promise. And somewhere in that promise, the boy found hope strong enough to carry past the final curtain. Some stories fade with the lights. This one only grew brighter. In the years that followed, the boy's health battles continued, but so did his music. According to local friends, that small guitar never left his side. He learned simple chords first, then entire songs. The blue scarf stayed draped over the back of his chair, a reminder of a night when the king of rock and roll made the world stand still just for him. Fans who were in the showroom that night kept the memory alive. Some described it in fan club newsletters, others in letters to newspapers. A few grainy photographs surfaced over the years, showing Elvis crouched at the stage edge, his hand resting gently on the boy's shoulder. The images weren't perfect. but they didn't have to be. They carried the truth of that moment, the sincerity in Elvis's eyes, the joy on the boy's face. Even people who hadn't been there told the story as if they had. The details shifted depending on who told it. Some said the boy sang a full verse. Others remembered just a line, but the heart of the memory never changed. It was a night when a superstar saw past the crowd and into the life of one fan. For Elvis, kindness like this wasn't rare. Those close to him said he often sent gifts or called fans after shows. But there was something about this boy, maybe. The courage it took to even be there. Maybe the way he held that cardboard sign in trembling hands, that made this night unforgettable. The guitar itself became a talking point whenever guests visited the family's home. The boy would strum a few notes, smile, and tell them, "Elvis gave me this." There was no exaggeration in his tone, just quiet pride. In fan circles, the story became a symbol of Elvis's generosity. It wasn't about fame or headlines. It was about a human connection, the kind that can happen in an instant but last a lifetime. And for the boy's family, that connection was more than a memory. It was a turning point, a reason to keep looking ahead. Years later, when asked about that night, his mother put it simply, "He didn't just give my son a song, he gave him something to hold on to." Kindness doesn't need a spotlight, but sometimes, when it has one, it can change a life. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes kindness can stop a room. And tell me in the comments, what's the most touching act of generosity you've ever witnessed? Your story might inspire someone else to do the same. If this moved you, share it with someone who believes kindness can stop a room. What's the most touching act of generosity you've ever witnessed?